We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? And I give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, today I once again unequivocally express the Coalition's utter condemnation of former Premier Dan Andrews' attendance at the CCP military parade, where he stood with dictators, despots and war criminals like Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. Will the Prime Minister show the necessary leadership to join with us and so many other Labor leaders in this condemnation?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. At the same event 10 years ago, Michael Ronaldson,
Order.
a minister
Member for Goldstein,
in the Coalition government,
Member for Hume. We're just going to have a bit of order in the House. Prime Minister has the call.
Australian Embassy officials formally represented Australia a very different approach from the approach of the former government. And I do note that yesterday I had the honour to meet Yulia Navalnaya here in Parliament House, and I know that she met people from both sides of the House. We discussed her advocacy for democracy, freedom and human rights in Russia and our absolute, unequivocal opposition to Vladimir Putin and his outrageous authoritarian regime. Tonight I will join another meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, convened by President Macron. During the election campaign, this became a source of difference between the two political parties. We on this side have always been unequivocal about standing with the people of Ukraine, and I am pleased that the Coalition appear, to the credit of the new leadership, appear to be backing the participation in the Coalition of the Willing this time. We stand in this country for democracy. In this country we stand for human rights and liberty. We continue to do so in all of its forms. We continue to call out, and yesterday we introduced new sanctions against Russia, as well as, of course, the position that we've had over a period of time with North Korea. I haven't and never will meet Vladimir Putin. I haven't and never will meet the leader of North Korea as well. And we will give every support to people fighting for democracy right around the world. That's my government's approach.
Give the call to the honourable member for Richmond.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Home Affairs. In the lead-up to Police Remembrance Day on 29 September, how is the Albanese government honouring police bravery, and why is strong leadership so important in supporting our police?
Give the call to the Leader of the House.
Thanks, Speaker, and I thank the member for Richmond for the question. In doing so, acknowledge her service in the police force and also acknowledge the members for Tangney, Wide Bay and Cowper, all of whom have served. The 29th of September marks National Police Remembrance Day, an important day where we pay tribute to the courageous officers who've lost their lives in the line of duty. While loss of life is always a tragedy, there's a huge chasm left when we know that the person we've lost has chosen to put themselves in harm's way to protect the rest of us. The unspeakable violence committed against officers in Tasmania and Victoria, Constable Keith Anthony Smith, Detective Leading Constable Neil Thompson and Senior Constable Vardam Devathotar, as well as the detective who's still recovering from serious injury, has shaken us as a nation. Every day our police put themselves in the service of the community. They put themselves on the line, and that's a spirit of courage and selflessness that is the mark of every man and woman from the moment they make the choice to enlist. Last night, many members of the House joined in attendance at the National Police Bravery Awards. 2 AFP officers were honoured, Sergeant Aaron Cox and Inspector Peter Murphy, for their work in the Vanuatu earthquake, and 3 members of the New South Wales Police Force, Sergeant Daniel Cooper, Senior Constable Adam Davis and Senior Constable Joshua Norton, for their work in the Manning River floods. These officers all went above and beyond to save lives and have demonstrated exceptional bravery and commitment. I hope to be able to have them in the parliament today, but true to form, they went straight back to work first thing this morning, back to Vanuatu, back to northern New South Wales. But I do want to acknowledge that we have in the gallery the Commissioner of the Australian Federal Police, Rhys Kershaw. By the time Parliament resumes after today, the AFP Commissioner will be Chrissy Barrett. So this is our last chance to be able to acknowledge as a parliament the extraordinary work of Rhys Kershaw. He retires on the 4th of October to spend time with his family, including his new granddaughter Tulsi and 2-year-old grandson Jarrah. Commissioner, in your time in this role, you have overseen the work of the Federal Police in child protection, in counter-terrorism, in transnational serious and organised crime, in cybercrime, foreign interference, our engagement around the world in the Pacific, and the personal protection role that is so significant to the members in this place. Today, as a Parliament, Commissioner Kershaw, we honour you. The Parliament acknowledges that Australians are safer because of your leadership, and we thank you for your service.
The Prime Minister.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Can I just join the Minister in expressing my admiration and thanks to Commissioner Kershaw. I've made some lengthy public comments when we announced his retirement. I say to the Commissioner, thank you for the relationship, for the briefings, for your diligence and for your commitment to keeping Australians safe. And I say just 2 words: happy fishing.
Indulgence, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I join with the Prime Minister and other members of the government in wishing Commissioner Kershaw all the very best? You have been a great friend, advisor, supporter and influence in much of what you have done over many years. We respect that, we wish you well, and we know that you leave a legacy of service.
And on behalf of all members of the House from across the chamber, I too would like to pay tribute to Commissioner Kershaw for his service to the House of Representatives, to the Parliament and to the nation. I'd also like to add that the member for Hinkler also served as a Queensland Police Service, and the member for Latrobe. Give the call to the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. This month, the Prime Minister expelled the Iranian ambassador, an action the coalition has strongly supported. But what message does it send when the Prime Minister of this country doesn't have the spine to condemn his former flatmate, Daniel Andrews, for posing in family photos with the Iranian president, a leader whose regime has actively orchestrated attacks on Australian soil?
The member for Gellibrand is warned. The Prime Minister has the call.
Well, they are delulu, Mr Speaker. If they are going to come here over an issue in which there was bipartisan support for the expulsion of the Iranian ambassador for at least 12 hours, before there was criticism of the government's action. My government have taken decisive action. I am not responsible for what every Australian citizen does. What I'm responsible for is what
members on my left
is what our government does, and the former government was responsible for sending Minister Ronaldson
and the Leader of the Nationals.
Minister Ronaldson to the previous event. Mr Speaker, we stand unequivocally in condemning the Iranian regime, and what international affairs requires is for governments of purpose, with that sense of purpose, to engage diplomatically with our friends. And we had yesterday people such as President Paboa and a whole range of people attending there. My position is very, very clear, which is we did not send any government representative because it wouldn't have been appropriate. None of my team would have sat in that position. As simple as that. And there was no representative, what individuals do, very separate from the government, is a matter for them. And I note, I note that it certainly is not something that I would have even thought of doing, and no one in my government would have thought of doing. As simple as that. But the idea that what you do on an issue such as opposition to the Iranian regime is look for difference where there is none actually undermines Australia's position in international politics. Just as the response from last Wednesday morning to try and look for distinction and look for political difference for what was the first time that any government has expelled an ambassador since the Japanese ambassador was expelled during World War II.
The House comes to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Canberra.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its commitment to build Australia's future?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Canberra for her question, and I note that this is her last question time before she takes a bit of leave for obvious reasons, and I wish her all the very best, I'm sure on behalf of the Parliament, for the youngest addition to her family when they come along in coming weeks. This week marks 4 months since the Australian people put their trust in our government to keep building Australia's future. And every day since then has been all about delivery. Cutting student debt by 20%, benefiting some 3 million Australians, students and apprentices, to the tune of an average of $5,500 each. Enshrining penalty rates into law to protect weekend and overtime pay. Fast-tracking 5% deposits, making it easier for young Australians to get into their first home. And, Mr Speaker, Australians are about strengthening Medicare. If you know, you know, Mr Speaker. Have been over 1.8 million visits to the 90 Medicare urgent care clinics we have opened. The only thing they've needed was their Medicare card. $8.5 billion investment into bulk billing, tripling bulk billing incentive for 11 million pensioners and concession card holders last term, and this term extending that to all 27 million Australians. Making medicines even cheaper and then cheaper again. Passed the Parliament just this week, from $42 down to $30 and then down to $25, but for concession card holders, freezing it for the entire decade at just $7.70. Now, at the election, Australians voted for a government with the plans and policies to build Australia's future. Our government has been focused on that in the first 4 months since that election, going through commitment by commitment, passing legislation to deliver, providing funding to deliver on the commitment so that we restore faith in the political system in this country. We will continue over coming months to make sure that we tick off those commitments one by one, and it will be certainly a year of delivery is our focus as we go forward.
The call to the member for Clark.
Speaker, my question is to the Attorney-General. Attorney-General, last week Australian taxation officer whistleblower Richard Boyle was sentenced after facing a lengthy prosecution for blowing the whistle on egregious wrongdoing in the ATO. His case was, of course, yet another demonstration that our whistleblower protections are deeply inadequate. Minister, exactly when will the government table the necessary amendments to the Public Interest Disclosure Act and the Corporations Act so the whistleblowers aren't the ones being punished?
Call to the Attorney-General.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Clark for his question, and I acknowledge his ongoing advocacy over many decades in this important area. Last week, the District Court of South Australia sentenced Mr Boyle in relation to 4 charges under the Commonwealth Taxation Administration Act 1953 and the South Australia Listening and Surveillance Devices Act 1972. I understand the court did not record a conviction and imposed a 12-month good behaviour bond. I will not otherwise comment on the specifics of Mr Boyle's case. The decision to prosecute Mr Boyle is a matter for the independent Commonwealth Director of Public Prosecutions. But what I can say to the honourable member is that the Albanese government is committed to delivering strong, effective and accessible protections for public sector whistleblowers through reform of the Public Interest Disclosure Act 2013. And that's why yesterday we announced that a public consultation process on exposure draft legislation will commence next week on a second stage of reforms to the Public Interest Disclosure Act. We want meaningful engagement on this. We want to bring forward a package of reforms that will improve the accessibility, operation and administration of the Public Interest Disclosure Act. The government's reforms will be designed to clarify and strengthen protections for whistleblowers, simplify the procedures for making and handling public interest disclosures, and strengthen the scrutiny and oversight of the system. In addition, the government proposes to establish a new whistleblower ombudsman within the Office of the Commonwealth Ombudsman, which would be the most significant addition to the federal integrity landscape since the establishment of the National Anti-Corruption Commission. The Whistleblower Ombudsman would provide strong oversight of the Public Interest Disclosure Act to ensure disclosures are being made and responded to appropriately. The Ombudsman would also have new dispute resolution functions and the power to investigate reprisals. These reforms will build on the government's significant improvements to whistleblower laws implemented in 2023 and provide a comprehensive response to the 2016 independent review of the Public Interest Disclosure Act by Mr Philip Moss AM. The government will also conduct a statutory review of the private sector whistleblower laws, and we will consult with stakeholders in due course on this. I very much look forward to working with the honourable member for Clark as the government pursues these reforms, which he knows are critical to supporting integrity and the rule of law.
Before I call the honourable member for Leichhardt, I'm pleased to inform the House that the guests of the Minister for Education are representative of the Australian Schools Plus, a national non-profit organisation dedicated to closing the education gap. And also in the Special Business Gallery is Mr Barry Robson, who served as President of the Asbestos Disease Foundation for over 20 years and is retiring. And also we've got students from Kingswood College in Melbourne and Monero High School from Year 11 in the member for in Monero's electorate. Give a call to the member for Leichhardt.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering for Australian workers?
The call to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations.
Well, thank you, Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for Leichhardt for that question and, of course, his long-standing advocacy for working people in far north Queensland. And isn't it great to have him join this side of the House? The Albanese Labor government went to the election with a commitment to protect penalty and overtime rates, and we are delivering. We made this commitment because there were cases underway at the Fair Work Commission that would allow, if successful, these entitlements to be stripped away from some of our lowest paid workers. And as a government, we will always back Aussie workers, including our low-paid workers. And as a government, we refuse to sit by and see workers lose this critical part of their take-home pay. Because penalty and overtime rates matter. They're a long-standing feature and a vital part of the modern award safety net. And of course, the modern award safety net supports some of our lowest paid workers. Workers who rely on penalty and overtime rates are more likely to be women, work part-time, be under the age of 35 and employed on a casual basis. Now, for retail workers like Emily, who was expecting her first baby, she said to me penalty rates give her the room to be able to save for her little bubba and to help her move to make sure her new family has a roof over her head. And it's why, for workers like Emily and many others who rely on penalty and overtime rates, that we made this commitment. And I am proud that in the first 3 weeks of this term of the new parliament, we passed our law to protect penalty rates as a priority. Since we delivered these protections to penalty and overtime rates, I have met with many, many workers who say they can sleep more soundly at night because they know their penalty rates are protected. Of course, I met with Cassidy, who works in retail. She told me that she now feels confident that her penalty rates and overtime won't be taken away. These protections build on our record of delivering better outcomes for working Australians. Our government has delivered reforms that have boosted wages, closed the gender pay gap and are creating more jobs. We are now seeing real wages grow, with real wages growing for 7 consecutive quarters. More than 1.1 million jobs have been created under this government's watch, and we continue to experience historically record lows of low unemployment. And of course, the gender pay gap is at a record low. As a government, we will continue to focus on delivering for Australians and working Australians, because that's what Labor governments do.
Call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister, and I refer to his answer yesterday where he rejected reports that ISIS brides were coming to Australia. Last night, Sharri Markson revealed on Sky News that Deputy Commissioner Dave Hudson—
Order.
Mr Speaker.
Order. I'm not sure why there was such a reaction, but I want to hear— I don't know. Order. We can't have a situation where we can't— Who's that? Order. Order. The member for Riverina. We're going to reset. The member for Riverina is warned. We are going to reset, and there's not going to be commentary when someone's asking a question. Order. So, when the House comes to order, the Leader of the Opposition is going to be given the option to— because I can't hear the question, and then everyone will want me to make a decision on that, and they'll say, make a ruling, and I can't. So the Leader of the Opposition will start a question again. There's going to be silence.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister, and I refer to his answer yesterday where he rejected reports that ISIS brides were coming to Australia. Last night, Sharri Markson revealed on Sky News that Deputy Commissioner Dave Hudson had confirmed New South Wales Police were, quote, working through that issue with the Commonwealth, end quote, and that New South Wales Police will meet with the AFP next week in relation to this matter. Can the Prime Minister explain this contradiction?
Order. Give the call to the Prime Minister.
Thank you. There is no contradiction between my answer yesterday. Was absolutely correct.
Give the call to the honourable member for order. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the honourable member for Gilmore.
My question is to the Minister for Aged Care and Seniors. How are the Albanese Labor government's generational reforms rebuilding our aged care system and delivering better care to more older Australians?
The call to the Minister for Aged Care and the Minister for Seniors.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for Gilmore for her question. She is a tireless advocate for older people in her community. Mr Speaker, Australians have been waiting a long time for aged care to be done properly, and this Labor government is getting on with the job of delivering an aged care system that we can all be proud of. Our implementation of the new Aged Care Act is now less than 2 months away. Yesterday, Minister Butler and I announced the critical step that locks in our new Aged Care Act and the accompanying support at home program. That means certainty. Certainty for older Australians who are waiting for care. Certainty for families who want their loved ones cared for. And certainty for providers and workers who can now plan with confidence. These reforms are about reshaping aged care so it delivers more care sooner and closer to home. That's why we're fast-tracking 20,000 additional home care packages in the 8 weeks leading up to the 1st of November before the new system begins. And once support at home is underway, We will roll out a further 63,000 packages by June 2026. I want to acknowledge the constructive engagement.
The minister's going to pause. The member for Cowper. That's unacceptable. You're going to leave the chamber under 94A. Look, we are just going to listen to the minister. All that noise is not helpful to anyone. I'm just going to ask the minister to return to the question, be directly relevant.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As I was saying, I want to acknowledge the constructive engagement of colleagues across the parliament, including Senator Ruston, whose contributions have helped ensure that these changes will endure for generations. Speaker, since yesterday's announcement, the sector has responded very enthusiastically. United Care says older Australians deserve care that is timely, person-centred and respectful of their rights. Today's announcement brings us a step closer to that vision. OPAN says this is good news, especially in advance of the new Aged Care Act commencing on the 1st of November. National Seniors Australia say older Australians waiting for care and their families will welcome today's news. But the new Aged Care Act is not the beginning of our reforms. We've already mandated 24/7 registered nursing, delivering more care minutes for older Australians. We've put a registered nurse on site in aged care more than 99% of the time, delivering more direct care for over 250,000 older people in aged care homes. We've delivered more than 6.8 million additional minutes of care every single day, compared to under the last government, and invested $17.7 billion to increase the wages of aged care workers. Mr Speaker, every older Australian should be able to live with dignity and independence, supported by the care they need. That's what our reforms are designed to deliver, and the passage of this legislation is the latest milestone in our relentless pursuit of aged care transformation.
Call to the member for Page.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, the New South Wales Police have publicly confirmed they are working with the Commonwealth on the return of ISIS brides to Australia. Prime Minister, are you calling the New South Wales Police Deputy Commissioner David Hudson a liar?
Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. That is an outrageous suggestion. I have respect for our police officers. The questions that were asked yesterday went to whether the Australian government was giving support to this cohort. I confirm that the Australian government is not providing assistance to this cohort. Syria is an increasingly unstable region. Our security, as well as our intelligence agency, you would expect, will continue to work to ensure they're prepared for any Australian citizen who comes home. But the Australian government is not providing assistance to this cohort. The report yesterday was wrong. I declared it to be wrong, and long may the opposition continue to get their questions from Sky After Dark.
Call to the honourable member for Hasluck.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Deputy Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government supporting Australian defence industry and our Australian Defence Force through AUKUS and the government's landmark export reforms and investments in defence? What barriers has the government had to overcome to achieve this?
Call to the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Defence.
Well, I thank the member for her question. In the 23-24 financial year, our government spent $16.6 billion on procurement for the Australian Defence Force, more than in any year of the Abbott, Turnbull, Morrison government. In fact, more than in any year full stop, because at the time this was the largest amount that has ever been spent on procuring for the Australian Defence Force. And then last financial year we spent even more. $18.2 billion. And so as a result, we have the Rheinmetall facility in Brisbane employing hundreds of people building the armoured reconnaissance vehicles for our army and, in fact, the German army. We have the new Hanwha facility at Avalon in Geelong, which in time will support 1,800 jobs, building self-propelled howitzers and the infantry fighting vehicles for the army. And very soon we will have the Kongsberg facility at Williamtown near Newcastle building long-range missiles as a result of the more than $16 billion over the decade that we are investing in establishing a missile manufacturing capability in this country. But in addition to supplying the ADF, under the banner of AUKUS, and through legislation that passed the US Congress at the end of 23 and the complementary legislation that passed our parliament at the beginning of 24 and the reforms in the UK, barriers across our respective defence industries have been greatly reduced, and in turn what we've now seen is more than 470 businesses in Australia become licence exempt as they contribute to the defence supply chains of the United States and the United Kingdom. And in that time, it has facilitated more than $130 million of Australian defence industry exports to the US and the UK, $110 million of which have happened just since this February. Now, this is a transformation. Australian defence industry is growing, and with it, the nation's sovereign industrial capability. And that stands in such stark contrast to the lost decade that we saw from those opposite. I mean, when the Liberals were sitting around in their smoking jackets and slippers, working out what they were going to put in their press releases and what songs were going to accompany their announcements, the fact of the matter is that Australian defence industry suffered. Well, all of that has now changed, because this government is not about talking, it is about doing, and in the process we are building Australian jobs and we are keeping Australians safe.
Before I call the member for Mallee, that wasn't ideal, all those interjections. So the member for Fisher is going to take a break out of the chamber. Well, don't look surprised. You injected it 9 times in one answer. Order. The member for Herbert is not assisting this matter. Okay. We're now going to hear from the member for Mallee.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister told the Bush Summit last Friday, and I quote, "I won't BS people." But yesterday in the House he claimed he was the first Prime Minister in 40 years to visit Horsham in my electorate. Given former Prime Minister Tony Abbott visited Horsham to announce $1 million to open an oncology unit in 2015, wasn't your answer just more BS? Prime Minister, isn't your BS the real reason you were chased out of Ballarat by a convoy of tractors?
Order. The member for Fremantle. The member for Jagga Jagga as well. The Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. They're on the big picture today.
They sure are.
And indeed, Tony Abbott was elected in 2013, but he didn't make it to a 2-year anniversary. So it depends when in 2015, because he didn't make it. And I'm asked about the renewables issue in that part of Victoria and the Bush Summit. And I can quote from someone's first speech. Mallee is perfectly positioned for renewables, but the capacity of our existing grid infrastructure is making some promising options unviable. I look forward to working further to improve connectivity to the grid in Mallee.
How does that happen?
First speech.
How does that happen?
But don't think it was forgotten there. It wasn't one-off, because in 2020, this is why we desperately need to prioritise projects that will increase Victoria's grid capacity, including the Western Victorian Transmission Network project, which will install new power lines from Melbourne through Ballarat to Ararat, as well as VNI West.
Order.
In Australia's energy grid infrastructure, I will continue to support the development of related projects in my electorate of Mallee. But it didn't stop there, Mr Speaker. This is someone who was committed to renewables in that part of the world. 7th of October 2020, Dr Webster welcomed announcements she said would benefit the Mallee electorate. These included, to quote, up to $250 million to accelerate major transmission projects, including VNI West, which will benefit Mallee in order to deliver reliable energy.
Order.
Well, Mr Speaker,
Order. Members on my left.
The member used a term. I'll tell you what the term is.
The
term for someone who, in their first speech in this parliament, speaks about these projects and champions them, who backs it in 2020, who, when money's put in the budget, $250 million, puts out media releases saying, woohoo, this is going to be a great benefit, and then pretends somehow that they're against the very project that was given the tick by the coalition government, funded by the coalition government, and then tells people, yeah, no worries, get out there, bring along a noose to a public meeting as if that's appropriate. But it doesn't stop there, Mr Speaker, because there's a range of gnats have formed in backing in the electorate.
Prime Minister's time. The member
if
for
the Leader of the
time.
House wants to extend time, I'm happy to go on for a bit more too.
The Prime Minister's time has concluded. Order. Order. No. I'm just going to ask the member for Brisbane to resume. The member for Goldstein yelling out time constantly. There have been 4 questions on your side which have not been within time. If you would like the rules applied right across the board, I'm happy to do it. You do that again, you won't stay. The member for Brisbane has the call.
My question is to the Treasurer. What is the Albanese Labor government's plan to sustain the progress we're making on the economy?
Give the call to the Treasurer.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and thank you to the member for Brisbane for the tremendous contribution that she's already making to this place as a new, recently elected member. The national accounts this week were a really welcome reminder of the progress that Australians are making together in our economy and the stronger economy that this government is helping to deliver. We saw a substantial pickup in economic growth, better than most economists expected. We saw more proof that the private sector recovery that we've been planning for and preparing for and hoping for is gathering pace. And we also saw, as we heard in the Minister for Employment's answer a moment ago, that because we're getting incomes up, then we're seeing that reflected in consumption as well, and that's an important driver of growth. We've got new data today showing there was also solid consumption growth in July. So all of this puts us in good stead for the global uncertainty which surrounds us and the big economic challenges which confront us. We know that there's more work to do, that people are under pressure. We know the global environment's unpredictable, and we know our economy needs to grow more strongly, and for that it needs to be more productive. And so we've made good progress, Mr Speaker, but we know there's more work to do, and in that context I welcome, in the last hour and a half or so in the Senate, the passage of the government's payments reforms. These payments reforms are all about modernising our payment system and making our economy more productive as a consequence. These changes are about a payment system which is seamless and safer and stronger and which is better suited for the times, Mr Speaker. So that's a good example of us keeping the reform wheels turning. But also tomorrow, Mr Speaker, I'll be convening the state and territory treasurers. And that's all about advancing our economic reform roundtable consensus together. It's all about recognising if we want a more productive economy, the states have got a big role to play. So many of the productivity levers exist in the states, and that's why we work so closely with them and why tomorrow's meeting is so important. Tomorrow we'll be progressing our single national market policy and also lifting the ambition of our national competition policy. A big focus will be cutting red tape, be making it easier for skilled workers to go where they're needed most so that tradies can save time and money. But also on the agenda, faster approvals, harmonising regulation, boosting housing supply, and also taking the time to get road user charging right, Mr Speaker. So the meeting's all about working together to make our economy more productive and more resilient, because we know that's the best way to lift living standards in every state and territory in the Commonwealth. I look forward to speaking with the state and territory treasurers tomorrow on all of these important issues. It's an important demonstration of the reform effort that is going on this side of the House to sustain the progress that we've been making together in our economy.
The call to the member for Bradfield.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. We need an emissions reduction goal. Go high, said the science. That's your role. Will the government have ambition, take a 75% position, or side with the sellers of coal?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
I thank the honourable member for the question, but I'll be answering in prose, Mr Speaker. And I'll be answering in terms of the climate change. I'm sorry to disappoint. I'll be answering in terms of the Climate Change Act, which this government passed with the support of the crossbench, which is world's best practice when setting a target. And the Climate Change Act requires the government to receive the advice of the Climate Change Authority before setting a target. It's a matter of law. And the law also requires the Climate Change Authority to have regard to the best available scientific knowledge and the global temperature goals under Article 2 of the Paris Agreement, which is 2 degrees and 1.5 degrees. And under the Act, I must take account of that advice in setting the targets, and I am also able to take into account other factors, such as the economic impact and the social impact of the target we set. The legislation makes it clear, this process makes it clear what we must consider when setting the target, and that is exactly what we will do. We will have regard to the science, as we are required to under the law, and frankly, as we are required to morally. Absolutely, the parliament is and the government is. That is why we passed the Climate Change Act in the way that we did. And I note that the federal court has recently ruled on matters of target setting. In the Pabai case, the federal court, His Honour, was particularly critical of the previous government's targets and said, and I quote, "They paid scant regard, if any, to the best available science." And they considered the 2021 update a political window dressing to distract attention from the retained 2030 target. That's what they said about the previous government's approach. In contrast, His Honour said in relation to this government's 2022 target that it could fairly be said to be a target that was capable of realistically contributing towards limiting the increase in global average temperature to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. That's what His Honour said about our 2022 target. When we set the 2035 target, it will be in accord with the Climate Change Act. After I've received the Climate Change Authority advice, it will set out very comprehensively this government's intentions when it comes to 2035, and that's as it should be.
The call to the Chief Government Whip.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Multicultural Affairs. What is the Labor Albanese government doing to support multicultural Australia and social cohesion, and why is this so important?
Call to the Minister for International Development, the Minister for Small Business and the Minister for Multicultural Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Layla and Chief Government Whip, who is an absolute champion for her diverse community. Mr Speaker, I am incredibly proud to be a member of a government where a child with a name like Ryan, or Soon, or Ng, or Ambipaha, or Abdu, or Smith, or France, or Albanese can look at this parliament and say, I belong there. A part of a government that has a vision of an Australia based on fairness and equality, and where everyone, no matter who you are, who your parents are or where you were born, feels valued. But we know that our social cohesion is fragile. As long as we treat people with a gritted teeth tolerance instead of mutual respect, our social cohesion will remain fragile. Mr Speaker, this Albanese Labor government governs for all, because we believe that every Australian, whatever their race or religion, wherever they or their parents were born, should be able to feel safe and at home without prejudice or discrimination. And this should not be a partisan issue. But over this week, I've spoken to members of our Indian diaspora, and they've told me that they did not feel safe and they did not feel secure after the rallies that we saw on Sunday. And they've also told me that comments by some political leaders have exacerbated their fear and shattered their sense of security. And I want to say to Indian Australians, this is our message. You do not have to justify your belonging in this country. Yeah. We know you. We value you. We thank you for everything you have contributed to Australia, to communities, to charities, to business, to politics, to our medical profession, to our economy. We stand with you as we always have. When the immigration of Lebanese Australians was described as a mistake, that was wrong. When the African Australian community were unfairly stereotyped, that was wrong. When the Chinese Australian community were accused of being spies, that was wrong. And the scapegoating of Indian communities designed to undermine their sense of safety and belonging is wrong. Every member of this Labor government stands by the communities that they represent, and we will always call out attempts to divide us, because it is by calling them out that we will strengthen our social cohesion.
Give a call to the member for Herbert.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister, and I refer him to former Premier Daniel Andrews' significant and ongoing engagement with the Chinese Communist Party. Is the Prime Minister aware that Daniel Andrews has not disclosed his engagement on the Foreign Influence Transparency Scheme Register? And will the Prime Minister immediately write to his close personal friend and former flatmate seeking his immediate compliance with the register?
The Leader of the House.
Mr Speaker, the question has been framed in a way that it's not with respect to what the Prime Minister is officially connected with, which has then led to imputation after imputation in the way that that question has been framed.
Yeah, I raised this issue yesterday, making sure that any question fits in with the direct responsibility, and simply because the person is not an Australian citizen doesn't fit that bill. So we're going to ask the member for Herbert to rephrase the question, because otherwise we get into a scenario that, unless it is directly responsible, order on the point of order. Yeah.
The question is in order because the Prime Minister was asked would he write to his own government about his awareness of whether. Yes, would you? You as Prime Minister can write to your agencies. You're the Prime Minister, yeah.
No,
you can write a letter, That was the question. That
wasn't the question.
Well, that
the
was
question
the question.
was, will he instruct the individual to write to the Prime Minister, not the Prime Minister to write to himself?
No, the Prime Minister is aware of this, Daniel Andrews. Yeah. He's aware of the Foreign Interest Transparency Register, and he can write and ask for him to comply with the requirements of the Foreign Industry Transparency Register. It's a serious issue. And the reason the Leader of the House wasn't confident in his point because he didn't know what he was asked to do by the Prime Minister to cut off this question. That was what happened. Yep. So you should answer this.
But as the question stands now, so we're going to get the question right. We'll find a way. The member for Herbert's indicated that he's happy to rephrase the question, just to make sure that it's within the Prime Minister's responsibility. There's a way to loop it in that's quite simple to do, and mention the Prime Minister's Prime Minister's responsibilities in that matter. The member for Herbert has the call.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister, and I refer him to former Premier Daniel Andrews' significant and ongoing engagement with the Chinese Communist Party. Is the Prime Minister aware that Daniel Andrews has not disclosed his engagement on the Australian government's Foreign Influence Transparency Scheme, and will the Prime Minister immediately write to former Premier Andrews to comply with the register?
Order. The Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Everyone should comply with the law. It's as simple as that. everyone should comply with the law. Simple as that. That's my job. This is a rather bizarre question that they're going down. Everyone should comply with the law.
Order.
Whether it's someone.
Order. Members on my left.
Who, you know,
Deputy
part
Leader of the
selling
Opposition,
a port
the
and
member
then
for Page.
goes on the board of that port, or anyone else.
Order. When the member for Canning, we're going to hear from the honourable member for Macquarie.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Services. How is the Albanese Labor government helping to ease cost of living pressures for Australians, including social security payment recipients?
Put the call to the Minister for Social Services.
Thank you so much, Mr Speaker, and thanks so much to the member for Macquarie as well. Of course, we're a Labor government. We want people who can work to work. It's good for them and it's good for the economy. But when people can't work or when they're retired, we need a social security system that supports them to live with dignity. And that's why I'm so pleased that on the 20th of September, more than 5 million social security recipients will see a boost in their bank accounts of up to almost $30 a fortnight for single-aged pensioners. That'll help with everyday costs like groceries and health care, and it includes more than 21,000 aged pensioners and job seekers in the electorate of Macquarie. The changes on the 20th of September mean the full-age pension will go up almost $30 a fortnight. That means that a full-age pensioner is about $5,000 a year better off since Labor came to government. Job seeker will go up by around $4,000 a year since we came to government. Commonwealth rent assistance has increased by around 50%, so someone paying, say, $400 a week rent now gets about $1,800 a year more in rent assistance. And of course there's electricity bill support. People on the minimum wage are $9,000 a year better off. Paid parental leave means more time, more people receiving it and more money. In fact, a parent is about $12,000 better off now with paid parental leave than when we came to government for each child. Tax cuts for every taxpayer, averaging $2,500, 650,000 fee-free TAFE enrolments. We've cut student debt by around 20%, so that's about $5,500 in relief on average. And of course, the Minister for Housing's $43 billion Homes for Australia plan includes 5% deposits that have helped up to now about 180,000 first home buyers have entered into the market, and she's already built around 5,000 social and affordable homes extra. Cheaper childcare means around 1 million families are better off, cutting out-of-pocket costs for a typical family with a child in full-time care by about $7,000 a year. Cheaper medicines saved around $1.5 billion so far and counting, and of course more bulk billing. 90 Medicare urgent care clinics open already, another 47 to come. Our government is absolutely focused on cost of living, making sure we deliver on our commitments, meaning more Australians earn more, keep more of what they earn and receive more if they're on the age pension.
Call to the member for Curtin.
This is a question for the Attorney-General. Frontline police are being overwhelmed by the increasing scale and depravity of child sexual abuse material driven by AI tools. Next week is National Child Protection Week, and the theme is shifting conversation to action. The government has announced a crackdown on Notify apps, which is a start. We need action now. Will the government implement that announcement quickly and go further to support my bill to criminalise downloading AI tools specifically designed to create this horrific material?
Call to the Attorney-General.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for her question and the very constructive engagement we have had on this matter. Of course, it is absolutely of great concern to not only the government but to all of civil society that some of the applications we have seen and some of the technology that we have seen developed is so harmful not only to people generally in our society but particularly to young people. And of course we know that the member has a bill that she has presented which will of course be given due consideration by the government. But I will make 3 key points, Mr Speaker. This is precisely the reason why this government in the last term brought forward the statutory review of the Online Safety Act by a year. We have now had the release of that report brought forward by the member for Communications in terms of the government's response. And as has been made very clear, which is my second point, has been made very clear by this government, we are considering not only those issues very closely, but also we have announced that we will take steps in relation to these apps which have no place. There is no person who can justify having technology that causes a person to be nudified or to otherwise be denigrated, and for that to be disseminated and cause the harm that it is causing. And the third point that I would make, Mr Speaker, that of course when we consider criminal sanctions, they of course require careful consideration and discussion between states and territories, and I can confirm to the member that this has been openly discussed at the first meeting of the Standing Council of Attorneys General, which met only a couple of weeks ago. And I can assure the member and I can assure the House and all Australians that this is a matter of bipartisanship between Commonwealth and also state and territory Attorneys General. We are determined to get in place the right policy settings that are fit for purpose, that are forward-looking when we think about the danger of some of these technologies in the importance of ensuring that we have appropriate guardrails. And that, Mr Speaker, is why in the previous term of this government we announced significant measures that go towards the protection of young people, including the age restrictions on social media, including, as I said, only in recent times, as has been announced, our decision to bring forward appropriate amendments that deal with, in the criminal context, some of these apps. So I look forward, and the government looks forward to working with the honourable member and all like-minded members of parliament to make sure that we have these protections in place.
Yeah. Call to the honourable member for Werriwa.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Attorney-General. What has been the outcome of the Robodebt class action and what circumstances led this?
Good call to the Attorney-General.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for her question. Today, the Albanese government reached an historic agreement to settle Knox in the Commonwealth, an appeal from the original Robodebt class action settlement in 2020. Today's settlement demonstrates this government's commitment to addressing the harms caused to so many Australians by the former Liberal government through their disastrous and illegal Robodebt scheme. Mr Speaker, when the unfairness, the illegality and the cruelty of Robodebt became apparent, the approach of those opposite was to double down, to go on the attack against those who complained, and to maintain the falsehood that, in fact, the system had not changed at all. But, Mr Speaker, when this government came to office, we established a Royal Commission, which heard tragic stories of people being hounded by their own government to repay debts they did not even owe.
Forrest.
Mr Speaker, none of us should forget former Minister Tudge saying to vulnerable Australians, "We'll find you, we'll track you down, you will have to repay those debts and you may end up in prison." Mr Speaker, the Royal Commission's findings were damning. Commissioner Holmes found that Robodebt was a crude and cruel mechanism, neither fair nor legal, and a costly failure of public administration in both human and economic terms. Mr Speaker, the Robodebt scheme has cost taxpayers over $1 billion, and yet the most significant cost of Robodebt cannot be measured in dollars and cents. It can only be measured in human terms, because the Robodebt scheme destroyed lives. The Albanese government has been left to clean up this shameful mess left by those opposite, and that's exactly what we're doing. We've made significant progress in implementing the recommendations of the Robodebt Royal Commission. And today the government has agreed to settle the Knox matter, which, subject to approval by the Federal Court, would see the Commonwealth pay $475 million in compensation. Mr Speaker, this would be the largest class action settlement in Australian history, the size of which reflects the harm caused to vulnerable Australians by the policies of the former government. Mr Speaker, this settlement would be in addition to the compensation paid following the original Robodebt class action settlement in late 2020. It allows the court to determine separate amounts for the applicant's reasonable legal costs and for the reasonable cost of administering the settlement scheme. And while the objective of those opposite was to attack innocent Australians, this government's objective in settling this matter is clear: to get a fair outcome for the victims of Robodebt.
Call to the Manager of Opposition Business.
Thank you, Speaker. And my question is also to the Attorney-General. And I refer the Attorney-General to former Premier Daniel Andrews' decision to attend the Chinese Communist Party's military parade alongside dictators Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, Masoud Pezeshkian and Alexander Lukashenko. Is the Attorney-General aware of whether former Premier Andrews has complied with the requirements of the Foreign Influence Transparency Register scheme? And can she report back to the House on the status of former Premier Andrews' compliance with the scheme?
Give the call to the Attorney-General.
Mr Speaker, the answer is exactly as the Prime Minister said. Every person is required to comply with the law as it stands, including the FIT scheme.
Order. Give the call to the honourable member for Spence.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. How can households and communities benefit from more renewable energy and storage? What obstacles stand in the way of these benefits?
Give the call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for the question. And I'm happy to report to him and to the House that, as of today, 47,342 Australian households have installed a battery. And I'm happy to tell the member for Spence that his outer suburban electorate in Adelaide has the 5th highest take-up in all of Australia, Mr Speaker. So congratulations to the people of Spence. And indeed, it is a suburban and regional story. Take New South Wales, for example. The top electorates are Gilmore and Page and Richmond and Riverina and Macquarie, Mr Speaker, for take-up of cheaper home batteries. The top 5 electorates in New South Wales, all rural or regional. And indeed, rural and regional people know that they stand to benefit from this transition as households and as communities. The honourable member asked me what the obstacles are. Well, one of the obstacles are people who used to support the transition who now engage in division and political point scoring, Mr Speaker, who engage in hypocrisy. Now, we've heard earlier from the Prime Minister about the member for Mallee, who's been protesting against projects and transmission lines that she once lauded and celebrated when she was in office, Mr Speaker. But to be fair to the member for Mallee, she is in reasonable company, Mr Speaker. We could start at the top with the Leader of the National Party, who's also been railing against renewables. Couldn't miss the Leader of the National Party, who said, "We actually want Maranoa to become a renewable energy electorate. Western Downs is screaming at me to become the renewable energy shire of the country with solar and wind, Mr Speaker."
Order.
Or perhaps I should have started with the putative Leader of the National Party, the member for New England, Mr Speaker. My personal favourite, who couldn't resist claiming credit for renewable energy. He said in 2020, "We have made massive investments into New England, into renewable energy. In fact, we're one of the biggest renewable energy hubs in Australia. I made sure it happened." I made sure it happened, Mr Speaker. And then, of course, we can't forget the current Leader of the Opposition, who said, "Because my strong belief is that rural and regional Australia has lots to benefit from in the move to net zero," and I certainly hear that from my farmers and from my rural communities. So I'm excited for my rural communities and for the country as a whole for that future. I think that net zero by 2050 aim is perfect, Mr Speaker, says the Leader of the Opposition. Now, Mr Speaker, the Australian people know when a government's getting on with a job, and they know when an opposition is engaging in hypocrisy. If coalition hypocrisy created energy, Mr Speaker, we would have gigawatts to spare.
Give the call to the member for Fowler.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, your government promised Australians that energy bills would go down. Yet in my electorate, Rennie's Bar and Grill has seen its quarterly gas bill jump from $7,000 2 years ago to $9,000 last year and now almost $12,000, not even counting electricity or insurance. Prime Minister, isn't that true that your government's approach to net zero is leaving almost $0 in pockets of families and small businesses? And how exactly will the household battery rebate help them?
Order. Give the call. Order. Give the call. Give the order. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I very much appreciate the question, and I appreciate the Prime Minister allowing me to answer the question from the member for Fowler, because the member for Fowler has said previously that cheap home batteries policy is of little use in her electorate. It has a take-up more than double the electorate of Sydney, Mr Speaker, does the electorate of Fowler when it comes to cheap home batteries, because people in the outer suburbs understand that cheaper home batteries is one way they can reduce their bills permanently, Mr Speaker.
Order.
And Fowler, of course, has also been a beneficiary of this government's policies, with 65,000 taxpayers getting an average tax cut of $2,160 a week, Mr Speaker. And 58,750 households have received energy bill relief in Fowler. And 23,000 people have had student debt relief, Mr Speaker, with our HEX debt reductions. And $5,525,000 in savings across the PBS net threshold reductions, thanks to the Minister for Health's policies, Mr Speaker. These are real policies that support the people of Fowler, because this government knows that cost of living relief targeted at people who have been doing it tough in Fowler is necessary. The member for Fowler raises Rennie's business in the city of Fairfield, a business I know very well. I know the owner very well. I know that the owner sits on Fairfield Council with the member for Fowler, Mr Speaker. He's a good fella. He's a good fellow, Mr Speaker, is Rennie. And I'm sure he's concerned. But the member for Fowler is very good at giving advice to other people what they should do about cost of living. And she does that very regularly in the pages of newspapers and here, saying other people should do more. Now, the fact of the matter is we all have a responsibility when it comes to cost of living, including councils. Now, some of us served on local government, and then when we came here decided to be full-time federal members of parliament, Mr Speaker. Other people have made other choices. Now, the member for Fowler not so long ago wrote to the New South Wales government. Member for Fowler wrote to the New South Wales government. Okay, I'm still going to say it.
Order. When the House comes to order, we shall hear from the member for Fowler.
Speaker, this is relevance and I think professionalism as well. This is about as the Minister knows, this is a question to the Prime Minister, and as the Minister for Energy knows, or climate change, that he knows Rennie Bars and Grills and the business is actually struggling to keep his business alive. So please address the question.
Order. Order. Member for Barker, we're just going to get you to not help. The member for the Leader of the House.
Speaker, there was plenty of commentary in the question, which therefore opens up the relevance in the answer.
Yeah, and the Minister has mentioned the business directly. He's mentioned the home battery scheme. He's mentioned the numbers in the member's electorate directly. So, Order, I just want to deal with this. If you've raised these issues, the Minister is going to be directly relevant to all of the things that are mentioned in the question. So we're going to make sure his answer is being directly relevant, and he's been spot on so far in actually addressing the elements that you've mentioned. And I want to make I was going to just let me finish my point of order. He'll be able to read comments or quotes, but whatever he does, he's got to be directly relevant to the subject he was asked about. Does the member for Curtin still seek to take a point of order? Because I'd like to hear from her.
I'm seeking a ruling on whether the member for New England is breaching Standing Order 90 by the language that he was, the things that he was saying, which I don't want to repeat in front of the children upstairs here.
Well, I couldn't hear because there was a lot of noise. But if the member for New England has said an unparliamentary remark, or as the standing order says, reflecting on a member. I'm just going to remind the member for Curtin. You're entitled to raise that point, and if the member for New England is reflecting on members, I'm going to ask him to cease and desist that, and perhaps to assist the House, he'll remain silent for the remainder of this answer, and if he persists, he won't be here, and I'll warn him under the standing orders. I'm just going to ask the minister to return to the question and make his comments, whatever he's doing, directly relevant to the member for Fowler.
So the member for Fowler asked about cost of living in Fairfield City, which we both represent. And I'm reminded that the member for Fowler recently wrote to the New South Wales Government complaining about the entry fees for Prairie Wood Pool for swimming lessons, and the New South Wales Government wrote back to her pointing out that those entry fees are set by Fairfield City Council, of which the honourable member is a councillor, Mr Speaker. So we will continue to act on cost of living full-time with our full energy, not part-time.
Order. Far too much noise in that question and answer. I'm just going to ask everyone to show a bit more restraint for the remainder of question time. It's been a big 2 weeks, but we've just got to make sure that everyone is showing respect and also the language is used, including the minister's answers and also the interjections. I'd like to hear from the member for Menzies.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government strengthening Medicare? Why is it important to listen to a range of voices in shaping health policy after a decade of cuts and neglect?
Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thanks, Speaker, and thanks to the member for Menzies, who's already such a strong advocate of our push to increase rates of bulk billing, not just in his part of Melbourne, but right across Australia, Mr Speaker. And our first investments are already turning around bulk billing for concession card holders and kids. That rate now sits above 92%, Mr Speaker, with almost 7 million additional free visits to the GP every year as a result of our investment to triple the bulk billing incentive for those Australians back in 2023. But bulk billing, Mr Speaker, is still too low for Australians who don't have a concession card, and that's why we're going to roll out bulk billing incentives for those Australians for the first time from the 1st of November this year, Mr Speaker. Bulk billing, as we know, was in freefall when we came to government, Mr Speaker, and it's no mystery why. After the Abbott government failed to get their GP tax through the Senate, of course they decided instead to freeze the Medicare rebate, and the backlash rightly was immense, absolutely immense. And the Health Minister at the time, Mr Dutton, was shelved as Health Minister after barely 2 years in the job and replaced, of course, by the Leader of the Opposition. Now, perhaps the Leader of the Opposition thought of trying to find a way out of the utter mess left by that disastrous Dutton horror budget, or, to paraphrase that famous speech she gave to the LNP a couple of weeks ago, perhaps instead she thought of Peter Offen as she walked the corridors of the Parliament as the new Health Minister. She wondered, what would Peter say? What would Peter do? What examples can I draw from his time as the Health Minister? Well, it turns out, Mr Speaker, that's exactly what she did, because far from correcting course from that disastrous horror budget, the Leader of the Opposition as Health Minister instead doubled down on the Dutton agenda. She doubled down on the hospital cuts to our hard-working public hospital doctors and nurses and allied health professionals. She marked herself out as the only Health Minister in memory never to increase the Medicare rebate. Not once. Even Peter Dutton managed to increase it once, Mr Speaker. And of course she grabbed that Medicare rebate freeze and she made it her own, Mr Speaker. In the 2016 budget, the Leader of the Opposition extended that Medicare rebate freeze right out to the rest of the decade, Mr Speaker. Well, by contrast, Mr Speaker, we're strengthening Medicare. We're rolling out more bulk billing, more urgent care clinics, more doctors and nurses and cheaper medicines, and in the meantime fixing up the mess left by the Leader of the Opposition.
Or to the Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, having had questions from this side about cost of living, wages, economic growth, AUKUS, social cohesion, Robodebt, social security and Medicare, I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.